Hey there and welcome. It's easy to think of a country's constitution as some super dry, dusty old book that's just for lawyers, but what if it's actually the ultimate user manual for every single citizen? Well, that's exactly what the 1987 Philippine Constitution is. And in this explainer, we're going to unbox it, starting with its single most powerful idea.
It all kicks off right here, the very first line of the preamble. And look, this is way more than just some fancy opening line. This one phrase sets up the biggest idea in the entire document, that in the Philippines, the real power, the sovereignty, doesn't come from a king or a general or even a president. Nope, it comes from the people.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the nation's blueprint. Then, we'll dive into your personal toolkit of rights. After that, we'll break down the three branches of government, see how all that power is kept in check, and finally, we'll figure out how this living document can actually be changed over time.
First up, the nation's blueprint. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty details of how the government works, we've got to start with the big picture, right? The fundamental principles, the core values that everything else is built on. And boom, there it is again, but this time it's spelled out as a hard rule in Article 2. This is the golden rule, for sure. It means the government works for the people, period, not the other way around. Think about it like this. Any power a government official has, they're just borrowing it from you. This is a constant reminder of where the power really begins and where it ends.
So, these core policies basically set the ground rules for what kind of nation the Philippines is. These are the non-negotiables. It's a democracy that says no to war as a policy. It says civilian leaders are always in charge, not the military. Church and state are kept separate, and, crucially, social justice isn't just an afterthought, it's a top priority. These are the promises the nation makes to everyone.
All right, let's move on to Section 2, your toolkit of rights. If the whole Constitution is a user manual, then Article 3, the Bill of Rights, is your personal shield. This is the part that's all about you. It protects your individual freedoms from ever being trampled on.
This one sentence right here, it's the absolute bedrock of your rights. The key phrase is due process. What does that even mean? Well, it basically means the government can't just come after you for no reason or on a whim. There has to be a fair, established process, a clear set of rules that's followed for everybody. It's your #1 defense against arbitrary power.
Now believe me, this toolkit is packed. You've got the freedom to say what you think, to gather with others peacefully, to practice your faith, and to live and travel wherever you want. And this is huge. You have the right to get information on what the government is up to and to team up with other people to form groups and associations. And listen, these aren't just nice ideas, they're guarantees. The Constitution also has your back if you ever find yourself accused of a crime. It builds in all these critical safeguards to make sure the system is tilted towards fairness. You are always presumed innocent until proven guilty. Your trial has to be quick and out in the open. You get a lawyer. And the authorities can't just barge in and search your stuff or try to force you to testify against yourself. It's all about making sure justice is served.
Okay, on to part 3, the 3 branches of power. So now that we know the guiding principles and our rights, let's look at the actual machinery of government. You can think of it like a really well-designed machine with 3 separate parts, all working together to make sure no one part ever gets too powerful.
This chart lays it all out pretty clearly. You've got the legislative branch, that's Congress. They're the ones who make the laws. Then there's the executive branch, headed by the president, and their job is to carry out those laws. And finally, the judicial branch, the courts, who interpret the laws. But here's something I really want you to notice: the term limits, specifically for the president. A single 6-year term with absolutely no re-election. That was a very, very deliberate choice, designed to prevent a dictator from ever taking hold again.
And that idea of preventing too much power leads us perfectly into our next section, how power is checked. I mean, it's one thing to give out power, but it's just as important to make sure that power is being used responsibly. See, the Constitution doesn't just hand out power and hope for the best. It builds in a whole system to keep it all in check.
So that begs a really important question, right? If these 3 branches are busy running the country, who's watching them? Who's making sure they're following the rules? Well, the Constitution created a few special, dedicated watchdogs.
Meet the official watchdogs. These are 3 independent commissions that are kind of like referees. The Civil Service Commission makes sure people get government jobs based on what they know, not who they know. Kamalek is the guardian of our elections, and the Commission on Audit, or COA, is basically the nation's accountant, watching every single peso. And the most important thing about them, they're independent so they can do their jobs without political pressure.
And this right here, this is the philosophy behind all of it. It's the ultimate standard for every single person in government. It means that having a public office isn't a prize you've won, it's a huge responsibility that the people have placed in you. It's a trust, and you are always accountable to them.
So what happens when things go really wrong with a high-ranking official? Well, there's a last resort, impeachment. It's a two-step process. Think of the House of Representatives as the prosecutors. They investigate and vote on whether to impeach. If they do, then the case goes to the Senate, which acts as the jury, holding a trial to decide whether to convict and remove the official. It's designed to be difficult, and it should be, but it's there as the ultimate check on power.
All right, we're on to our last section now, changing the Constitution. The people who wrote it were smart. They knew the world would change, and they knew the country's needs would change. So they built in ways for the Constitution to adapt. It wasn't meant to be frozen in time, you know? It was designed to be a living, breathing document.
So, Article 17 lays out 3 different paths to propose a change. Congress can do it if they get a huge 3/4 vote. They can also vote to call a special constitutional convention to do the job. And, this is so cool, the people themselves can get together and propose changes directly through what's called a People's Initiative.
Okay, but here is the absolute most important part. The final boss, if you will. It doesn't matter who proposes the change, Congress, a convention, or the people. None of it becomes law until one last thing happens. It has to be put to a national vote, and a majority of the people have to approve it. This is the ultimate backstop. It guarantees that at the end of the day, the people, you, always have the final say.
And just like that, we've come full circle. You see the loop? The Constitution's power flows from the people. It creates a government with specific powers to serve the people. It then builds in all these checks and balances to keep that government accountable to the people. And any changes to the whole system have to go back for approval by the people. It's a perfect circle.
So, I want to leave you with this one last thought. The Constitution is this incredible blueprint, right? It's the user manual, the rules of the game. But you know, a blueprint is just a plan on paper. It can't build the house by itself. It needs builders. So the final question really is, who's responsible for taking that blueprint and actually building the nation?